Tuo Metnakewa. Good morning, everyone. Sabbathing on, happy Sabbath. If I was at my other home church in Kosrae, that's how I would start, but I wouldn't say it in English. um, Before I share some of my story of where I was, if you don't know me, I'm Mason. I was a student missionary through Walla Walla University this last year. I'm an elementary education major there, and I grew up in this church. You might not see me around because I go to Walla Walla, but this is my church too. I spent the last 10 months in Micronesia, which is in the Pacific Ocean, which is a much bigger ocean than you might realize. I was a teacher in Kosrae, which is an island in that space. Why did I go to Kosrae? It's in the middle of nowhere. I'd never heard of this island before, except for other people saying that they'd gone here or there. So to start, you have to go back. Before I went as a student missionary, I went down to the chaplain's office at Walla Walla and I said, I'm going to be a student missionary. What do I do? This is what I want. Where do I go? And they said, you want to teach kids? I said, yes, I'm an education major. And I said, I went to a small school. I went to Riverside. I want to teach in a small school. So they said, well, then you should go to Kosrae, because that's one of only 2 schools that have 2 grades in all the classrooms. I said, okay, I'll go to Kosrae, I guess. So I had so many options to choose from, as you can see. But this is my island. There are 4 municipalities, or like sections, like villages, you could think of them kind of. I was in the municipality called Tafunsak, that's on the left side. It's the biggest municipality. It has the airport, the main city center areas, if you can call it a city center area. And so that's Kosrae, what it looks like. It's only 42 square miles, but everybody lives along the edge because it's mountainous. So when you think of a tropical island and you think flat, sandy beaches, no. It's a coral island. It's high, it's mountainous. It reminded me of, very similar to here in a lot of ways, actually, but more so. So before I tell you guys about my story, I want you guys to get a visual of what it looked like. So this is what it looks like standing in the back of the truck as I'd leave campus. We'd stand in the back, hold on to the bar, and we do that all the time, very safe. And so this is what it looks like when we're leaving campus. Kosrae is known as the island of the sleeping lady. So you have her head and then her body. There's a lot of islands of sleeping ladies in the Pacific, but in my opinion, it's the only one. Here's a view of the harbor. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the sleeping lady again. Just more close up. And there were beautiful sandy beaches, but they did have coral. A lot of coral, and rocks with them. There were a lot of hills. Plumeria is the harbor, and mangroves. I don't know if anyone's ever been somewhere tropical, but the mangrove channels, a picture does not describe them. This is what they might look like on the outside in an open area, but this is inside the mangroves. Just imagine that going up higher than the church, and you're just in this place. Just so much green. I thought I was from somewhere green and wet. It rains about 50 inches a year in Portland. And the place that it rains the least in Kosrae, it rains 200 inches a year. So whenever I would go, there was a hike we went on, and I was up in the cloud forest in these just green. And they have ferns. Well, we have ferns here. People say, oh, it's so green here. It's hard to think of this place as being green after being there, because everything's green. So much more. It's just pictures don't describe it well. Here's just pictures of some properties. I don't have a picture of a house. I was looking through all my pictures, trying to find pictures of what houses looked like. For some reason, I don't have them. I just didn't think about it. But here's just someone's property, like a shed or a cookhouse. And then some back roads. There's one main road, it's paved, but there's not a paver on the island, so there are a lot of holes in the road in different places. But there's back roads once you get past that road, and you don't want to take just any car on them. To put into perspective some of the just levels of the mountains, this is my roommate in a gorge. So that's how big she is compared to how big the gorge we were in is to Funsack Gorge, climbing up through the rocks to go to a waterfall. And so coming from a place full of waterfalls and green and mountains, I was very glad that I picked the island I did and wasn't on a flat, sandy island. I would have been a lot more homesick. So now that you guys might have a visual of where I was, I'm going to go back to the beginning again, the second beginning, leaving here, and then my first view of the island of Kosrae. When I got to Hawaii, we actually spend a week in Hawaii for training first, being told, don't do this, please do this, and getting acquainted with our principal. I met my roommates, and this is our first, when we were the first people that came to meet us and greet us. And there were four of us, including me. Sorry, I thought that was the next picture when I said that. And we had quite the welcoming party when we got to the island. A little bit overwhelming. It's from Hawaii to Kosrae is about an 8.5-hour flight. It looks close. It's not close. So you get off the plane, and you're just met immediately with this intense heat. People tell you it's hot, it's tropical, but so hot. It's just the instant heat wave as soon as you get off the plane. And then there's all these people that are there to greet you that know your name, but you don't know theirs because there's only 4 of you, and there's many of them. But these are some of our welcoming party as we were getting our first time on campus. And as we entered the campus, this is the view that I saw. This is the view, my favorite view on campus. My favorite view on the island was the mountain behind our school. Behind this mountain, there was another mountain that was it was the second tallest in Kosrae, Mount Matante. But this hill is just, the pictures can't do it justice. They can't capture how green and beautiful it is. And our church was right on our campus, so I was very spoiled. It was a 1-minute walk to church if I was running late. And then this is our younger classrooms building. From left to right on the bottom story is the kindergarten building, and then 1st and 2nd grade, our library, our office, and then it goes down to the upper grades classroom where I was in the 2nd building. I taught 5th and 6th graders. Up above was where we lived. All of the student missionary teachers lived in the farthest apartment on the left, and then we had some housing for guests, and then the principal and his family lived in the far apartment. So it was usually in the 80s. This is a picture that I took, and I realized after I put this on that this says 78 degrees. It was usually in the 80s, between high 70s to mid 80s, but it almost never felt like it. It almost always felt like it was in the 90s or in the hundreds because of the humidity. And if there were no clouds and you were outside, it was just so hot. I think a time came where I said, wow, it's not hot. I could probably count on one hand the number of days that I said, it's chilly today. And that was because it was windy and there were clouds. And maybe it was raining. But just more views of the campus. It's such a beautiful property. We didn't have views of the beach or anything from our campus. We were 4 or 5 houses in, and there were lots of trees, but it didn't matter. Now, it wasn't always sunny. This is a view of the campus when we had the most flooding the whole time I was there. Nothing got ruined, but the church foyer, it was almost the floorboards. I was asking my fellow student missionaries how deep they thought it was, and they said, well, maybe a foot. So some places it was probably a foot, 6 inches to 12 inches on the ground. Maybe that's dramatic, but it was really deep. We were a little worried it was going to come into their classrooms. But this is just a picture of the fact that it was sunny, but it rains a lot, but it's hot, so it's not like here where when it rains it's cold. When there it rains, it's still hot. And so these are my Kosraean family. That's me, obviously. My roommate, Mary Alice, and our suite mates, Beatrice and Melissa. When we got to Hawaii, the superintendent of the mission looked at our group and was like, oh, that's going to be an interesting year for that school. Those 4 girls are from 4 different universities. They have 4 very different personalities. This is going to be interesting. But unexpectedly for some, but for us, we knew it's something we'd all prayed about a lot, and it was on our hearts, because sometimes girls struggle to get along. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but it's true a lot of times. And we hit it off really well. We became sisters completely. They understand me as well as my sisters from Pathfinders that I grew up almost. They know my insides and outs, and they understood me in ways I thought someone that just met me couldn't. And so this is us when we'd been more comfortable with each other. But there was an opening. There was one more position for a teacher that we needed. And we got on a call that there was a girl from Andrews that wanted to come. And so the 4 of us that had become a family were a little apprehensive. A new girl is going to come into our house. That means that there's going to be 3 of us in one room now instead of 2. It's going to be tight quarters, and we don't know this girl. And so this is us taking our last selfie, saying goodbye to our happiness and our happy home. We're a little dramatic. Maybe just me, but yes. But my friend Cassie, she's in the truck. It's hard to see. I have a lot of blurry pictures. But she became a part of our family too. It was hard, but we're definitely sisters of the heart. I don't know how to explain it. I consider them all to be part of my family, even though we're from different places. One's from Texas and goes to school in Texas, and she's from Florida. Some are from Andrews. Beatrice, my Korean friend, is from Paraguay. Some are from Montana. Like, we're from the farthest that you could be apart from each other, but we're still family. So that's kind of my first impression of the island, being really hot and making really good friends. But of course, I came there to teach 5th and 6th grade, and so that's what a lot of my year was spent about. So here's our school. This is our whole school. It might look like not a lot of kids, but they can make it feel like a lot of kids. This is them at the beginning of the year with all the teachers. I was told when I got there, we're so glad you're here to teach. By the way, your class is the hardest in the school. You're going to have 15 kids. There's been a lot of girl drama in your class. There's been a lot of girl bullying. All of the list just went on and on. I was like, thanks. I'm glad to be here too. So this is my class. I ended up with 8 girls and 3 boys. A little bit outnumbered. The boys felt and expressed that they felt outnumbered sometimes. But I have to say that those people's opinions of my class were so wrong. They were so crazy and so much work. And yeah, they were very hard. But they had such good hearts, even though they were little brats a lot of the time. Like, what people said about them being difficult was true, but what people didn't tell me was that they weren't just a difficult class, that they were a loving, fun class. Oh, sorry, that's not the right picture. They like to give you a run for your money, and they like to test you. But, I mean, they're 5th and 6th graders. What you gonna do, right? I love them so much. They love me. Like, we were great. So this is the first day of school, worship, when we were all so excited and giving a lot of energy to try to wake them up after their summer vacation sleepiness. And my kids on the first day, they barely fit into the pew. I had the biggest class in the school, and we fit into the pew just barely at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, we did not fit. We had to take 2. And then the first day of school, just doing projects and getting to know each other. What? Oh, I went the wrong way. Sorry. And then first day of school picture, I'm pretty sure. We took a lot of pictures together. So this is like a good example of them being crazy. I say we're going to take a picture, and they all go run to stand on the desks. And then half of them, I say we're going to take a nice smiley picture, and you can see half of them don't. But they had fun with it. My kids really, we got new Bibles, and so we took pictures, and they were pretty excited because we started the year with a variety of versions. And when you don't know the language super well, the schools in the islands, all of them teach in English. Like, they come there to learn English. They don't speak the local language at school at all. They're not allowed to. The point of coming to the school is their parents send them there to learn English. So some of the kids are there for a Christian education, but most of the kids are there to learn English because the schools are just better than the public schools. The public school, sometimes my kids, they're 5th and 6th graders. I feel like that's enough said a lot of the time. But they would complain about being in school because the public school would get out at noon. Like, they start later than us, and they get out hours before us. I'm like, yes, and you know a lot more than they do, don't you? Yes, you're learning a lot more. Stop complaining. So this is one of the pictures of them with Bible class, just being excited that they don't have to be confused about what version we're reading in, trying to understand King James while someone else is reading in a different version. And their goofiness, this is Anisha. She's normally really quiet, but she has surprised me a lot, being occasionally loud. They really loved to read storybooks. A lot of my kids didn't enjoy reading. We worked on that a lot in the year, trying to learn to like reading. It's hard because if you don't have good teachers, like my school was just getting a good principal that was helping improve the standards. So when you have years of teachers that aren't pushing them, then they are below level when they get to your level. So how do you help balance pushing them but helping them like to read? Because reading's my favorite thing, and I wanted them to like to read. And so sometimes we'd read storybooks just so we could have fun with it. One of their favorite things was skits. And so they were all insistent, even though they were not the best actors. And even though they didn't like being animated on stage all the time, they really wanted to do a skit. So this is them being like, woohoo, we got to do a skit for the Christmas program, even though not all of us actually wanted to do it once we got our parts. They're fun. I tease about them, like, they're so crazy, but like, I loved how crazy they were. Like, if you know me, you know I'm a really crazy, energetic person, and so having a class full of crazy, energetic people was really exciting and challenging and good for me. So this is just some more pictures of my fabulous students. They always had good ideas. What I loved was the chance to get their ideas. I thought when I went there that I wanted to teach 1st and 2nd grade, but then I switched to 5th and 6th, and I'm really glad that I did because they're just so much fun. They have so many good ideas, and you can really, they're ready to pick their brains about harder concepts. So I really enjoyed standing up on the chairs, my friend Mary and Michigo, and they were saying, Miss Ellis, when we had a substitute, because I got sick, so they had a substitute, Mrs. Meharry, let us play this game for science class. Like, but I don't know how to play this game for science class. They're like, we'll teach you. And so this is them trying to teach me how to play this science game, which took them a really long time to explain. They're really bad at explaining. Like, we'd work on it, but they're just really bad at explaining. It wasn't very complicated, but for some reason it took them a long time to explain. But they were excited. For some reason it makes it so much more fun when you add a game to the trivia and they get to move their position on the board instead of just asking them the questions. So this is just some fun with science class and art. Surprisingly, even my boys, like sometimes some people have something against art, I've noticed. Like people are like, I don't want to paint, I don't want to color. But my boys loved coloring and art. And there was none of that like, oh, we don't want to do this project. The only thing they didn't like to do was sketch. Anything that didn't involve colors, they weren't happy with. The other favorite subject that they had was selfies. All the time. Sometimes I would come back from running to find the restroom, and I would find on my phone, lo and behold, how did nobody touch my phone? But there are now selfies on my phone. It's a mystery to me. But this one, as you can see, I'm there. So this was teacher approved. And just trying to get class pictures was always an adventure. Someone was always moving. One of the things I remember most from taking class pictures is saying, don't move, and just saying that over and over because it's hard to get 11 people not to move at once. I didn't realize how hard that would be. Like I said, my class had a lot of energy. Honestly, the thing that was hard with them is they just didn't want to be in school, a lot of them. Like, it's not that they didn't want to learn. It's not that they weren't smart. I thought my kids were really smart. The thing that made me so, if I can say this, angry, was when I was told that my 6th grade class wasn't smart when I got there. You've got a 6th grade class, you just got a lot of kids in that class that aren't smart. That really bothered me because I had a lot of kids who hadn't been supported in my 6th grade class. My 6th grade class took a little bit longer to learn, but they were smart. They could get this stuff. Now, there was a kid in my 6th grade class who needed more one-on-one time, but they were all still smart in different ways. They all had really good skills. But along with that, it's not that they weren't smart, it's just they really would rather be outside. I mean, who wants to be inside when it feels like summertime all the time, right? Just imagine how we get at the end of the school year when it's hot and you just want to be outside. Imagine dealing with that every day. But along with that, PE and recess was everybody's favorite time, except for mine because I was watching them. At tetherball they love so much, and they could be really great about, but you have to watch them because sometimes the big kids would try to cut the little kids. This is one of the times where the big kids are mostly the ones playing. But they're tetherball pros. I am really bad at tetherball, and the 7th graders had no problem telling me that I am really bad at tetherball, and that's okay, I'll just let them do it. Yeah, they just loved, they loved life and loved to play. Sometimes my principal would say, kids here, they have so much better coordination than in the States. Like kindergartners and 1st graders, they can play sports a lot more just because they spend all their time. They spend their free time playing basketball, running, doing games. They spend so much time outside, even though there's a lot of electronic time that they have over there too. Electronics is a problem everywhere, I swear. And so frustrating sometimes to see your kids being on a tablet or something that their parents have. But along with that, they still were so active. I was shocked. My kids were so fast. I'm like, I'm not going to run to keep up with you. I'm just going to watch. That's a good option. This was not a teacher-approved photo. I took the picture and then realized they should not be climbing up a pole to get the tetherball off the power lines. But they were very committed to continue the game because of how short recess is. So this is one of my students climbing, so I snapped the picture and then told her to get down. We got it off for her with a broom, but it was just, they were just getting too into it, I guess. It's just one of my favorite crazy photos because they just do the silliest things. You turn your back and then the next minute they're doing this. So yeah, my class, there were some fun stories. I want to tell you guys a cool story for me. Something that was one of my favorite things teaching was my boy Holter. He was my 6th grade boy. He's the boy so Mary's on the far right, and then that's Holter. And he's just the craziest kid. He has so much energy. He's so smart, but he has just so much energy, which makes it hard for him to focus for a really long time. And he would just in the middle of classes, other classes, not usually Bible class, which would be a good time to ask Bible class questions, but he would be like, Miss Ellis, what about this? And be some random Bible question. He's like, what happens when we die? Or is this really what heaven will be like? Because we were doing the life series reading, so when it gets to the section where it talks about, there's some Bible verses in the reading curriculum and things, and it talks about heaven a little bit, and he was asking questions. And I'd just be like, in my head, why is this during reading class? But you need to answer this, so just ignore what you're supposed to be doing and answer these questions. And I just loved how he was actually interested in asking questions about the Bible. And one of my 5th graders, my other favorite, teaching, oh, you're being a good teacher. They remembered something. That's good. If it's at least one thing, that's good. One of my 5th graders, Yulene, we're in the middle of Pathfinders. We're playing Ultimate Frisbee, and our team is losing really badly. Maybe because I'm on it. I'm not very good. But she yelled at me across the field, but Miss Ellis, we can still have joy. And I was just like, she was listening, because it felt like they were not listening during Bible class a lot of times. Because when I would just start talking, it felt like they would just start not listening. And we did Fruits of the Spirit, and we were talking about joy. And I didn't have Bible curriculum, but I knew I was supposed to do Fruits of the Spirit. And so when you're trying to spend 3 weeks on joy, you get to the point where you have to talk about, well, how are you supposed to always have joy? When life is hard, how do you explain that to 5th and 6th graders? Life is hard, but you should still be joyful. And so her getting that was just my yes, somebody was listening today, because they they loved life. They loved talking to each other, especially when I was talking. They just had a lot of crazy energy. Anytime a camera came out, they wanted to be in the picture. This is at our school picnic. Very different than how a school picnic would go in the States, I would say, because I don't know if I have a picture of it. These are my lovely gentlemen. This is Travi, Francis, and Holter again. They're like the three musketeers, or the terrible trio, or just my gentlemen. I always called them my gentlemen. My whole thing all year was, you need to be gentlemen. They're like, we don't want to be gentlemen. Like, you need to be gentlemen. So if anything, years from now, they're going to think in the back of their head, Miss Ellis told me I had to be a gentleman, because they would stand on desks or be crazy, and I would say, guys, and I would say things to my ladies as well. I'm like, gentlemen, you need to stop. You need to work on this. Like, you need to, and we'd work on that, because it's not just about math class, it's also about learning to be a good person. So you can't do this, whatever it was. They did a lot of really crazy things. It's hard to remember because it's all just so many things. But they were really sweet too. Kind of like King of the Hill, but King of the Inner Tube. That was very popular. I don't have a picture of it. Rolling around in the sand, for some reason, that was their go-to thing to do at the school picnic, was to cover themselves like over their face too. I would be scared to get sand in my eyes, but nope, they just went for it. I wish I had a picture. This is Tracy. She's one of my other sweethearts. I loved all of my students. I know I like call, oh, my sweetheart, but like, they were all so great, like individually for different reasons. They were so much fun. Francis decided the great idea when we were cleaning up trash. We did for Surface Day cleaning up trash. Trash is a really big problem on all of the islands, but it's just not valued to pick up trash. A single leaf on your yard, wow, you're a dirty person, but you can have trash everywhere. It's a different values. And that's okay that picking up leaves is important, but it's not okay that we have trash everywhere because it's polluting our island, so we need to clean it up. So there were so many times I repeated myself, you have to pick up trash. Like on the campus, like they picked up trash, we picked up trash. Because Zika is a really big problem on our island because we have so much trash. In the whole Pacific, Kosrae is one of the ones that has the most problems with mosquitoes having Zika, and it's because we have so much trash and like dirty water places that aren't cleaned up, and trash is adding to that. So if we could pick up the trash, that would help a lot with our other problems. So we worked on it with them. They're just so, I don't know, there's just so many pictures. I just love looking at them. They're just crazy. Before we got to go and just play for picnic, we always had like Surface Day and picnic on the same day, so it's like you earn picnic, and so they don't just get bored playing all day, because they would. They really got into Spirit Week and Crazy Days. My favorite would definitely be Francis decided for Crazy Day. He won. He wore a local skirt and lipstick and dressed up like a girl for Crazy Day. And I was just like, okay, you go. Like, you definitely won. He was so embarrassed. He kept his face covered like most of the day, but he's the one who put it on. I mean, what did he expect to happen? So it was pretty funny. He was excited when he got to change. This is a good example of what I mean when I say my boys were crazy. Holter loved sitting in the trash can for no reason. Like, he's small. He was my smallest boy, and he's one of the smaller kids in the school. And I would turn around in the middle of a class, and he'd just be sitting in the trash can. Holter, please get out of the trash can. In the process of getting out of the trash can, he'd often slide back down and get stuck in the trash can. So this might look like Francis is feeling bad for sticking him in there. Nobody ever stuck anyone in the trash can. Holter always stuck himself in there and then got stuck. So I have pictures of Francis trying to pull him out. I have pictures of Francis on one side and Travi on the other trying to get him out of the trash can, and then me on the other side of Travi trying to get him out because he just found a way to get himself stuck in that little trash can. I don't understand why he did it more than once, but I mean, it made everybody laugh. He definitely added a lot of humor and life to our classroom. Honestly, like I said, my class was given a really hard time, but they were such a good class. They had a lot of heart, and they made me feel like I was going crazy sometimes. I mean, sometimes they would come up to me and tell me, "You're the worst teacher we've ever had." And then the same day, the same student would tell me, "You're the best teacher we've ever had." And I'm like, what is going on? Are you having, like, what are you doing? Why, you guys need to think about what you're saying. But they just, I don't know, they knew that I loved them, which probably helped a lot. I remember other teachers getting after my class. They'd go in the hallway. It was open air hallways, so like you walk out of your classroom and you're outside under a covered hallway. And as my class was walking back and forth, other teachers would tell me, by the way, in computer class, I told your class, be nicer to Miss Ellis. She loves you. Why are you mean to her? They're like, I don't know. And then other days, one of the other teachers would say, hey, your kid did this. I got after them. I'm like, that's good. I would have gotten after them too. Why are they so mean to you? I don't know. But, and they knew it too. Like, some of them would come up to me and say things like, I don't know, they'd pick on each other too. It's a culture that picks on people. Like, it's a thing. Like, you come up and you hit someone. Not just like a, hey, how you doing? But like, you really hit someone. And like, we had a no hands-on policy at school, but there are times where they come up and hit someone. I say, you can't do that. They're like, oh, it's just friendly. I don't care if it's just friendly. You can't do that here. You can do that at home. And so there's that. Another really funny story, just to tell you something a little more about their craziness. They thought it was the most funniest thing to go running from PE back to the classroom and hide under my desk and around other things in the classroom that I wouldn't know they were there. Because if I count the heads, I'm not going to realize that 3 of them are missing. Or 4 if one of the girls decided to run away too. And so sometimes I'd be like, guys, come on. Or else I'd just go in and be like, oh, I'm so shocked. How were you guys in here? Like, I don't know. Just all the antics. Imagine any antic you can think of that a kid would do, they may have done that. Like, they loved antics and craziness. And I loved them, and they loved me, even though they liked to give me a run for my money. So yeah, I loved them. They were just amazing. There's not a better word for it. They're the sweetest and meanest class, depending on the time of day. Now, I did go there to teach. I spent a lot of time lesson planning and grading and doing what teachers do, but I spent a very, very significant amount of my time doing projects on campus. Our principal, it was very important to him that we constantly be improving the campus. So that meant that we were doing many, many projects. We painted many classrooms, we rearranged the library, we moved bookshelves, we added tires to our playground, so we dug holes in the mud for big tires. We put in a seesaw. We built, this is a project that I got all of those desks out of there. Years and years of desks. Every time the school got a new desk, they just shoved them back there. So I got them all out. We plastered the laundry room. We'd never plastered before, so that was exciting. If you've plastered before, you know it's not an easy thing. We did not know that going into it. But it took a long time, but now I can say I've plastered something. We built those trusses for a shed for the bus, so it would have something to cover it, except for the bus is broken, so we can't even get into the shed right now. So that's unfortunate. But, I mean, it's there, ready for when the bus will be able to drive again. We had a lot of issues with our bus. We painted a lot. We got so sick of painting. And we painted railings, we cleaned things, we rearranged things, we did things for the church, we did so many projects. I could go on and on with the projects that we did, but we spent a lot of time doing projects. Almost every Sunday was spent doing projects. So yeah, the campus looks a lot nicer than when we first went there. Another big space that our time was spent on was at church. Like I said, the church is on campus. I was talking to some of my other SM friends because I didn't realize it wasn't typical everywhere for you to attend Wednesday night prayer meeting, Friday night vespers. Sabbath morning, there were like 3 services kind of. Like 9:30, everyone was together for songs. Then at 10, we had Sabbath school. At 11-ish, it's island time. In theory, we would have church, and then we would have potluck. And in the evening on Sabbath, we would have sundown worship. And in Kosrae, you go to all of those. It's your responsibility, your privilege, or any word that you want to use. You have to go. You get to go. You can use either word, but you do have to go. And I talked to some of my other friends. They're like, no, we didn't go to all of the services at the church. I'm like, you probably didn't live on campus then. But we did, so we did go. This is the principal and his wife. They have 4 kids. This is the youngest. We're being twinsies. Pathfinders, we put on, Pathfinders was mostly our school kids that would come and stay. And we'd do games and worship together. And do honors and bonding. These are our little pre-Pathfinders. Telma in the middle, she's the sweetest little girl you've ever met. I looked back at my journal, and one of my first entries is, Telma is the cutest little girl you could ever meet. She was a little kindergartner, and she just stole your heart. She just come and sit in your lap and not leave. And just want to play with your hair and just be a sweetheart. They had a lot of fun participating. And our Pathfinders, for the end of the year, we took them on a camp out to the other side of the island. Not what you would usually think of how to get to a Pathfinder camp out. We took a boat, but Pathfinders is a little bit different in Kosrae than it is here, which I learned after I was in Pathfinders for 8 years here, so it's very different. But with the church, I had notes, sorry. Like I said, we were on the same campus, so we spent a lot of time doing things. We were involved with the youth group, so we would go and sing. We sang at the prison, we sang at people's houses, and we just bonded with the people. We spent a lot of time getting to know the people in the church, since we had the opportunity to see them so often. Something that's interesting coming here versus being there for church is the fact that our service, everybody knew what was happening, right when it started. It wasn't announced when the elder decided who was going to do children's story. Because as a student missionary, you get used to being told you're going to do children's story during announcements. So we had a lot of fun. I had the class that had the most Adventist kids. We have a really small Adventist church. Out of our whole school, there were less than 10 kids that were Adventist. And that's because the Maharis made it so there were more than 5. But, because they have a lot of kids. And so these are 2 of my students. I had 3 Adventist kids in my class, so we had a lot of fun together. Another privilege that we got to do as student missionaries was every other weekend we got to put on a branch Sabbath school on the other side of the island. So we would drive all the way from the one side all around, because there's only one road, to Utwe, and we'd go to one of the elders' homes, and as soon as we get there, he'd send his granddaughter, who was 10, into the neighborhood saying, they're here. And so we just wait for people to show up, and that's when you start. It's not like here where it's like, the meeting starts at 5. It's like, oh, the meeting starts when people are here. Whether that be 5 minutes early or 20 minutes late. So we had a lot of fun at Branch Sabbath School. We would sing songs together. They really loved making melodies, no matter how old they were. We had a variety of kids. Sometimes we had up to in the 30s of kids at Sabbath School. And we'd tell a Bible story, and most of them would listen. Some of them were very little, depended on the week. And we'd play a Bible game, like this one's where we're trying to blow the boats across the ocean in the Sea of Galilee. And then this is one of my favorite boys, Tristan. He was always there. It was so nice for me because my class really, it was hard. I'm going to be honest. I loved them, but they took it out of me a lot of times. 5th and 6th graders will, eat you up and, kick you down. But also, they're so amazing. And so it was so refreshing to come to Branch Sabbath School and have kids be excited to sing instead of having to, twist their arm to sing during worship. And to have kids that are the same age be like, you're so cool, instead of, why are you making us work? It was such a nice break. So I really fell in love with some of these kids. And this is our last picture, so we're trying to be happy, but it was really hard to say goodbye to them, because you're not going to necessarily see them again. They're not necessarily going to remember you. And so saying goodbye to them was really hard. But yeah, they really love selfies too. It's a universal thing. Everyone on the island, you have a phone, you have a camera, we're happy to pose for you. They loved it. But, so yeah, with church, prayer meetings on Wednesday, student missionaries usually did most of the service. Vespers had more of a schedule, so that was nice. Usually, we didn't have to do most of the service. And so there were a lot of different opportunities at church. I know I'm kind of going over a lot of things, but kind of quickly with some of them. But just one more thing that was really cool is that I thought it was really nice that something that we don't do here that I really liked about what they do there for church. I mean, they don't really call it church. Sabbath is not church. It's called divine service. There's no, because you go to church so much, so it's not this is church. There's so many different services. I got used to not saying I'm going to church because I go there all the time. But Friday night after Vespers, we would have special features. So we'd play a Bible game every week. The whole church would play a Bible game together. So maybe it would be like Bible charades, or maybe it would be like a word game. But coming up with a different Bible game every week for a whole year is really hard. Like, I learned a lot of new games through the help of Google to play because you really run out of ideas. And then people say, we played that last month. I'm like, that's because it's been a long, like, how many Bible games can you think of that you can play with a big group easily or a small group? So it was interesting to learn that. But we also got to go on some adventures. There was a little bit of free time. My adventures might make it look like there was a lot of free time. There wasn't a lot of free time, but we had some fun adventures. I got to go snorkeling. I'd never been in warm water before, like in an ocean. It really freaked me out at first, the fact that the water was so warm, because I'm used to our ocean and our rivers, which if you think they're warm, you might want to get checked out because they're not. Kayaking was super fun. I love kayaking, and kayaking through the mangroves we got to do and through the harbor and stuff. We went on a 6-hour kayak ride around like almost a quarter of the island. That was crazy. I decided after that I wasn't going to do the whole island, but because I got very seasick. But it was, a good adventure. And climbed a coconut tree, kind of. It was slanted. I can't climb a coconut tree properly. It's very difficult. It's me right before I risked jumping in. That was the most terrifying moment, when you have to be like, you can't get back up, but you don't want to fall either because you need to drop. The water wasn't super deep, but that was the only way to get down. We were really bad, like I said, at climbing coconut trees. So we got up and then realized we couldn't really get down. The bridge was fun. Everybody loved going there because it was breezy, and breezes are nice when it's hot. Right in front of the harbor. And we would jump into the water there. And I'm used to jumping off of the rocks and stuff here, like at Dugan Falls and high jump places. But climbing up onto the edge of a bridge like this, jumping off of a pillar, that's kind of freaky at first. But we would do it together, like the three of us jumped off at the same time. And I jumped off by myself on my birthday because I said, well, we were coming back from the Pathfinder camp out, so I spent most of my birthday with Pathfinders. I said, if I can have one thing, I'm going to jump off the bridge. So I did. It was one of our favorite things to do, was to go jump off the bridge. Waterfalls, like I said, so green. So we'd go hiking through, and we hiked up to waterfalls with our Pathfinders in Walung. This is a picture of a really big waterfall. When I got there, I said, looks just like the waterfall they have in Pohnpei. I mean, Pohnpei is the island over, and their waterfalls are way bigger, but I've never been there, so to me, it looks just as cool. But it was a lot of fun seeing waterfalls, because here we have so many waterfalls. So, like I said, some of it really felt like home, just because it's so green, so many waterfalls. I got scuba certified, so that was really fun. One of the resort owners, he gives us a local discount because we're missionaries. So we got certified and got to see what it looks like down there. I'd never been in tropical water, so it was just, everything was cool, even if it was just coral. This was my most amazing favorite adventure that I got to go on. I only climbed one of the mountains. We are on an island known for our big mountains. I climbed the smallest of the 3 big mountains. This is Mount Oma. But for me, it was quite the hike. And it was just so exciting. It had waterfalls, and it had Japanese caves, and it had cool ancient mud that we found. So it was just, and ferns. Ferns almost as big as me. That was cool. They have fern trees. I thought I liked ferns before I left. Now I really like ferns. They're just really cool. None of my pictures captured how big they were. But if you've ever seen, banana leaves are easily as big as me. Taro leaves are easily as big as me. And they had ferns that were almost as big as me. I was like, wow, everything here is here, but just amplified 10 times. So it was just fun. There were just a couple other random highlights about the year. Something that was really fun is we got to have game nights with the local kids, because around our church were other Adventist families, a couple of them. So the kids would come over, and we taught them how to play Dutch Blitz, and they loved Uno. They didn't know how to play Uno. I was shocked. It's such a basic game, but they didn't know. And so we learned how to play Uno and games with Uno cards, and it was just fun how they loved it. And they showed me that thought I was bad at ping pong before, but I'm really bad at ping pong because they're really good at ping pong. I don't know, they just loved playing. Like, in class, like, it was just the transition of even my students. Like, in class, they were one way. And as soon as school was over, they loved me so much and they just wanted to play. Like, oh, we're free, now we'll just sit and talk to you or hang out. Like, they wanted to hang out and talk and be. They just didn't want to be in school, which, I mean, who can blame them? It's hot. And it's hard to want to have education valued when your parents might not value it as much. The food was very different. This might not look like amazing food to you. This is probably 2 of the best meals I had on the whole island. Whenever there was like a party, a big party equaled really good food. Fresh coconut and breadfruit cooked 3 different ways, if you know what breadfruit is, and so many different ways to cook bananas. I didn't realize there's like 50 types of bananas. To me, a banana is a banana. But now I'm like, a banana is not a banana. There are so many different ways. So food was different. Our water was river water, so if we could, we showered in the rain because it was cleaner and because the water pressure was better. The water pressure here looks really bad because we caught the picture too late, but the water pressure outside was way better than in our house. And then the picture on the right is something that happened rather frequently in our apartment. The kitchen sink decided to explode. You're just using it, and all of a sudden water comes gushing out the bottom. It is because the bottom piping came out. That's Kosrae plumbing for you. It does that. But we learned how to fix it. I'm not a handy person, but I figured it out because my principal got sick of us telling him the sink was broken again. He's like, what did you do? It wasn't me, I swear. It just breaks on its own. It really does. It just kind of falls apart. Humidity does that to things. They just kind of fall apart. And I learned to be a little bit Kosraean. My Kosraean is very bad. I know very little Kosraean, but I did learn to make a local plate. I did make a local skirt. And I did not learn to climb coconut trees, but I did get pretty high up this one. So yeah, there were a lot of different, those kind of highlights. I really, wait, there might be one more. One of my other favorite highlights, one of the ladies, the middle lady in this picture, she has a little boy. There were a lot of little kids in our church, and I love little kids. I wasn't sure I liked little kids until I got there and had little kids like just love on you all the time. So I really like little kids. And her little boy, all the other student missionaries hated at first. They had like a secret code word for him. They called him Nomad. They're like, did you see Nomad? Because he was terrible. He'd come up and just punch you in the face, hard. And he was like this tall, but when he's sitting beside you and he does that, it hurts really bad. Or he'd come up and he'd just like hit you. And so they did not like him. And so I was like, ooh. But he was really nice to me, so I don't know what was up with them. Because when a little kid starts to do that, you just have to be like, no, stop, or just distract him. So we had a lot of fun together. We'd play like copy games, like I do this and he'd do this, or he'd do this and I'd do it back. And we just do that during church or after church. He definitely took up some of my time at church. And then there were these other boys. Anyone who saw you with a pen and paper at church, you were their new best friend because they wanted to come and color or draw or something. They just were like loved it so much. So yeah, my little boys. But the time came, the very sad time came, to say goodbye. And so this is our goodbye party. That's where I got my marmar. Like I said, like up until I went to Kosrae, this was the only church I ever called my home church. Like if someone said, where do you go to church, I would say Riverside. Like this is my church, it's always been my church. I grew up here. But when I said my goodbye speech, because you all have to say a speech, which is terrible when you're crying and you're sad and you don't want to leave people and they make you give a speech, you're like, really, you want me to give a speech? But okay. And I was like, I've never had another home church, another place that I would say I go to church here, but they really became like my other church family in like a big way, a way that I didn't think was possible because of the language barrier and the fact that the services were in Kosraean and they would talk in Kosraean around you and expect you to understand, even though you didn't. And so much, and even though there was hard, because we were so different, like they just became my second family. Just like these girls became my other family. This is saying goodbye in Hawaii. I hate goodbyes so much. Like I'm not someone who's like, cool, the next adventure. I'm someone who's like, no, this one's ending, this is bad. I wanted to come home so badly, but I did not want to say goodbye to any of those people. Like it's so hard to want to be home, but to not want to leave a place. You've probably, most of you have experienced something like that, I'm sure. But saying goodbye to two of my best friends was really hard in Hawaii because we were together on certain flights and then we had to say goodbye. So it wasn't like in Kosrae, like a big Band-Aid all at once where you said goodbye to everybody because it's one plane off the island. So you're still on the plane, you can't say goodbye yet. And so that was goodbye. And then there was coming home. And so all the people I said goodbye to that were sad and the people I said hello to that were just like, you're here and you're never allowed to leave again. And they're just so happy to see me. But I don't know, it was weird. It was weird how deeply I wanted to come home. I gave you guys, I know that's really long. Thank you guys for bearing with me. I have a little more to say. It's just hard to share. I just want you guys to feel like you were there a little bit. But some of you know, I was so grateful, by the way, for the number of people that prayed for me while I was gone. That's the only way I got through the year. There were so many really hard days. I loved my class, but they were really hard sometimes. And aside from that, I got really sick in, I think it was February. I got Zika, which if you don't know what Zika is, your whole body aches. I had a fever of 104 for a while, and that's really annoying when it's really hot outside already. You just, you're kind of delirious, you sleep a lot. I don't know how to explain. It just feels terrible. I don't even know how to explain because I had a fever for most of the time. But getting Zika was awful. And after that, kids, when they know you're weak, they realize they can get away with more. So that was exciting. But coming back after Zika, it was just hard to teach them. And I just remember feeling like I couldn't do it anymore. And I couldn't. And then I realized that I wasn't the one who was going to do it. I can't do that. That makes sense. And I just know that it's kind of, I remember, it sounds kind of cliche, but God really got me through the last half of my year. The first half of my year wasn't that hard, which is weird to me because everyone I talked to said, your first couple months are going to be terrible, but don't worry, it gets better. It was the opposite for me. My first 6 months there were fabulous, and my last 4 months there were really awful. Because I was sick. My body was just come home and eat good food. Stop eating white rice because you need real food. And so getting sick was really hard for me, and I was like, I'm just sick. What do I do? And my mom was like, I'm praying for someone to come and take care of you, because I've always been the child that she had to take care of. I will acknowledge that I am that kid. I'm the kid that gets breakfast made even when she comes home from college, and who had sack lunches made for her in high school. I am a very spoiled child, but I appreciate it, so it's not quite the same. But I got sick, and I'd never been sick more than 4 hours away from my mommy. So I was very much I just want to be home and I can't handle being by myself. And my mom said, don't worry, I'm praying for you. I'm praying that island mamas will come and take care of you. And I said, you're crazy, that's not going to happen. The principal and his family don't really care that much about this. My roommates are trying to teach too. People aren't sure I'm sick because we couldn't prove it because we don't send off blood samples off island. And the only way to prove it is to get it tested. But our hospital isn't that great. So I had all of the symptoms, so I think we can concur that I had it. But then we got a knock at our door, which had never happened. Our apartment was kind of off limits to people coming. And at the door were 2 church members, these 2 ladies. And they just came in, the pastor's wife and another friend, Natrice and Kosrae, and they just came and they sat down and they just started massaging me and my arms because they said, you need to get your blood circulating because your body's chilled and it'll help your body and this stuff. And they're like, what do you need? What do you need? And that was so weird to me because it was really hands-off for us. They were touchy, but we as the student missionaries, they were really hands-off with us because to them, you're the standoffish Americans at first. So it took a long time to get used to that. But they came and they brought me soup. And food is really expensive on the island. And they brought me soup with nice, it wasn't just nothing in it. And I was like, you brought me soup. That's a labor of love. And that's also a financial labor to bring me soup. It was a really big deal. I got the soup and I was just crying because my mom prayed and her prayer was answered. And I didn't believe it would be answered. I thought she was insane for praying something like that because it's impossible. But that's not true. God doesn't like that word in our vocabulary very much. I realized a lot. So some lessons that I took away that I'd like to encourage you guys from my year. Like I said, I could go on for hours and hours, and I would. But aside from like the fact, like, so the point, like, what's a missionary? Like I said, what is a missionary and stuff? Why did I go there? Well, I mean, the schools in the islands need teachers. Like right now, my school is short 2 teachers, and it makes me so sad because my fifth and sixth grade doesn't have a teacher right now, which is so sad to me. There's a first and second grade, a third and fourth, and a seventh and eighth grade teacher, but the fifth and sixth grade class, the most amazing class in the whole world, does not have a teacher, and that is very disappointing to me. And I'm sure that the right person is going to realize that they need to hurry up and get to Kosrae soon. But kindergarten doesn't have a teacher either, so I'm like, that's so sad. And that's not just our school, schools across the islands. There are so many schools in the islands. There's hundreds and hundreds of kids going to our Adventist schools and learning about Jesus and getting a good education that might give them a future. And if it weren't for if it weren't for college students, they wouldn't be open. Like schools have had to close down because they didn't have enough student missionary teachers in the past. Kids need a teacher. But I also learned while I was there how important and powerful prayer is, and not to underestimate God. I also realized, I had like 5 main things I realized. If you don't feel like God's with you, that's because you're not letting him in. It's not because he's not there. I had a breakdown, being sick, and I'm a very energetic, passionate person, so I tend to be a little dramatic. And I had a moment where I was just like, I feel like God is not here with me. Like I feel like he's not I know he's here, but I just don't feel like he's here. And that's really hard to admit to people, especially when you're a missionary. You don't want to say, I just don't feel like God's working in my life, because you know he is, you know you're helping kids, and you know you're doing a good thing, but you just don't feel it. And I just remember having this, moment where I realized that God is right here by my side. He's just waiting for me to be like, hey, and acknowledge that he's there, and, let him into my heart. And so that was really cool to realize, he's right there. Just let him in. But for you guys, the verse today was 1 Peter 4, verse 10, even though I accidentally typed the wrong one for the bulletin. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. My gift is working with kids. I tried to get away from it for a little while, even though I'm an elementary ed major, so really I was never getting away from it. I took a break from children's ministry for a year, a very long break. But you have a gift, and it might not be that gift, but everybody has gifts that God gives them to use. And the thing that was hardest for me was not feeling like I was in the mission field when I was there. I'm teaching kids, just they're the same age that I was dealing with Pathfinder kids. So what is that different except for I'm a teacher? What's the difference in me being a teacher there and a teacher here? Being a Pathfinder helper here, being a Pathfinder helper there. I work with kids. That's what I do. And so it was really hard for me because I expected to be I'm a missionary, but I didn't have that I'm a missionary feeling. It's just what you do with the gifts God's given you because you choose to let God use you where you are. So I want to encourage you that God has gifts for you, and I'm sure some of you know what they are, and some of you might not yet, and that's okay. Some of you may be using them, and some of you may be thinking, I haven't really used these gifts for God, so how can I use those gifts for God? But you can, and God can do really great things for him if you're willing to let him. So I really encourage you what your gifts are to use them for God, and to remember that the mission field isn't Kosrae, the mission field isn't Micronesia, and the mission field is here. It's where you are. For me, it was in Kosrae, not because it's somewhere else, but because I was in Kosrae. Now for you, it's here because you're here. So my point is, what is a missionary? A missionary is someone who is letting God use their gifts where they are. So location has nothing to do with that. I had a great mission year. But it's not just a mission year. We should live our lives like we're in the mission field. Thank you for listening to my story.